Hi everyone, this is another episode of Class 10 Science Biology. Today we're studying about hormones in animals. This is topic number 7.3 in the NCERT reader, pages 123 to 125. Let's start with glands. What exactly is a gland? Gland is an organ, remember. Okay? Gland is an organ that secretes, means that produce a useful substance. This is called a gland. Okay. What's a gland? A gland is an organ that secretes a useful substance. And this substance could be either hormone, it could be a hormone, or it could be an enzyme. Right? In our body, glands produce either hormone or enzyme. If the gland is producing a hormone, you call this gland endocrine gland. So what's an endocrine gland? It's a gland that produces hormones. That's known as endocrine gland. If a gland is producing enzyme, we call this gland exocrine gland. All digestive glands are exocrine glands. Okay, in exocrine gland you can see the exocrine glands have a duct. This part is known as duct. For example, salivary gland. It's an exocrine gland. Okay, and we have gastric gland. Right? They all produce enzymes. What does salivary gland produce? It forms an enzyme called amylase. Gastric gland produce another enzyme, for example, pepsin. But we don't have this name in the reader, so you don't have to memorize this. Only understand this one, okay? But this is what we have in our NCERT reader. That's called endocrine gland. So what's an endocrine gland? It's a gland that secretes hormone. Look at the gland here. This part is a gland. What you see here, right in the middle, is a gland. And these are cells of the gland. And you can see it's surrounded by blood vessels. These are blood capillaries. As you know, blood capillaries are permeable. You know, they have tiny holes on it. Okay, remember, it has holes. The blood capillaries are permeable and it has many holes on it, right? So what these cells do? The cells of the gland produce hormones. These hormones enter the capillary. Through these holes, the pores, okay, those are the pores. Through these pores, what happens to the hormones? Hormones go into the blood capillaries and the blood capillaries transport it to other parts of the body. And this is called an endocrine gland. And what's the other name of the gland? This is called exocrine gland. Let's study about hormones. Let's define hormones. What's a hormone? Hormones are the chemical signals. We call the hormones chemical signals. Okay, chemical signals produced by what kind of gland? Endocrine gland. Produced by endocrine gland and transported by the blood. It is transported by the blood. You can see in the previous slide we saw that it's transported by the blood. Okay, and why it is being transported? So that it can reach the target organs. Okay, what's a target organ? It's an organ on which the hormone produces its effect. Okay, it's an organ on which the hormone is producing its effect. It's known as target organ. For example, let's say what you see here is an endocrine gland. That's an endocrine gland. And that's one cell of endocrine gland. And what the cell is doing? It's producing a hormone. The green dots stand for hormone. This hormones, after its secretion released from the cell, enters the blood capillary. That's a blood capillary. And you can see inside the blood capillary there is blood. Blood is transporting it, okay, to another part of the body. And this is the target organ, okay, target organ. What's a target organ? The organ on which it will produce an effect. What will be the effect? We'll study some of the effects now. Okay, and this is called target organ. That's one cell of the target organ. And look what is special here. On these target organs, cells, you find specific receptors. And on these receptors, the hormones will bind. Okay, that means we have so many different hormones. Each hormone will have a different receptor. Okay, the shape of the receptor will differ. That means the shape of hormones will be different. Okay, different hormones act on different target organs. Each target organ has different receptors. So this hormone, which is coming through the blood, comes out of the blood and binds to the receptors and produce effect on the cell. Okay, and these organs are known as target organs. So how do you define the hormone? These are chemical signals. These are chemical signals so produced by endocrine glands, secreted by the, transported by the blood so that it can reach the target organ. What's a target organ? It's an organ on which the hormone produces its effect. Okay, how does it produce effect? It comes out of the blood, binds to the receptors on the cells of the organ and produce the effect. These are the endocrine glands in our body, and that's a brain. Inside the brain, you find a gland known as pituitary gland. Okay, remember, pituitary gland is connected to a part of the brain called hypothalamus. Hypothalamus is a part of the brain where you find pituitary gland is attached. Even hypothalamus secretes some hormones and which affect the pituitary gland. Also, hypothalamus is also counted as a endocrine gland. Pituitary gland, it's inside the brain. And in the neck, you find thyroid gland. This is a thyroid gland. Behind the thyroid, if you flip the thyroid, on the other side, you can find another gland. Okay, there are 4 glands on the other side. These are called parathyroid. But we don't study their secretion and function. Okay, only the diagram in the reader has this label. Okay, remember, it's behind the thyroid gland. And in the intestine, inside the abdomen, on the intestine, you find presence of pancreas. Okay, that's another endocrine gland. And this is adrenal. Okay, adrenal. Renal means kidney. The meaning of renal is kidney. Adrenal means adjacent to the renal, means on the kidney. It's on the kidney, right? You can see it on the kidney like a cap. These are called adrenal gland. Then in the case of male, you find 2 testes, the sex organs, testes. And in female, you find 2 ovary. Those are the glands that produce sex hormones. Okay, this is for the female. That's a female. Female, you find ovary. Male, you find the testes. Let's start with hypothalamus. What you see here is hypothalamus. Okay, can you see that's a pituitary gland label? The pink part is called the hypothalamus. Hypothalamus, here is a hypothalamus. Hypothalamus produce many releasing hormones. Okay, releasing hormones. In our syllabus, we don't name any of this. As you go to class 12, you study names of the hormone. These are called releasing hormones. They are produced by hypothalamus. And from the hypothalamus it comes down to the pituitary gland. See, it's coming down to pituitary gland. And it stimulate. These hormones will stimulate, means activate, the pituitary gland to produce another hormone, other hormones. Okay, those hormones are called pituitary hormones. There are many pituitary hormones, right? And what these pituitary hormones do, those pituitary hormones is meant for each gland. There's a pituitary hormone for thyroid gland, another one for adrenal gland, another one for testes and ovary. Okay, and these pituitary hormones stimulate thyroid gland, and thyroid gland will produce its hormone, which is thyroxine. That's a hormone produced by thyroid gland. And adrenal gland will produce its hormone known as adrenaline. Okay, and if it's testes, the testis will produce its hormone called testosterone, and so on. Okay, if it's ovary, it will produce another hormone, which is the estrogen. That's another hormone. So that's how the hormones are secreted, right? Hypothalamus secretes releasing hormones, or RH, releasing hormones. We don't memorize any names because they're not in our syllabus. And from the hypothalamus, these hormones go to pituitary gland. Stimulate means, activate, okay, the pituitary gland. Help pituitary gland to produce specific hormones called pituitary hormones. Those hormones are specific to each gland. There is a pituitary hormone for thyroid gland. There is a pituitary hormone for adrenal gland. Another one for testes. Another one for ovary. Okay, each organ has a specific pituitary hormone. These hormones stimulate these glands, thyroid glands, to produce thyroxine, adrenal gland to produce adrenaline, and testes to produce testosterone, ovary to produce the estrogen. Okay, that's how the hypothalamus through the pituitary gland control the production of these hormones. So they call the pituitary gland the master gland. It's a master gland because it keeps controlling every other gland in the body. Look at the pituitary gland. As we have seen, the pituitary gland is situated inside the brain and it's attached to which part of the brain? This is called hypothalamus. Okay, right. And those are the pituitary hormones. We don't learn them, just have a look at them. That's all. Okay, these are known as pituitary hormones. They are secreted by the pituitary gland and they go to different parts of our body. Okay, for example, it goes to adrenal gland, help adrenal gland to produce adrenaline. Okay, and this we don't study, so we'll skip that. And this is growth hormone. Okay, it affects all the parts of the body. We'll study about it now. That's TSH, another pituitary gland. It's only meant for thyroid, help thyroid to produce thyroxine, and these are only for ovary and testes. Male and female, you find these pituitary hormones. They help the testes to produce testosterone, and ovary to produce estrogen. Okay, and there's one more hormone called progesterone. These two hormones are produced by the ovary, right? And ADH affect the kidney. Okay, but again, we don't study that now, and other two we don't study. Okay, so what we study here about adrenaline, that's one hormone. Growth hormone we study. This is called growth hormone. That's the only hormone we study from the pituitary gland. Okay, and thyroxine we study. We'll study about testosterone, progesterone, and estrogen. Okay, what's the use of the growth hormone? Growth hormone, as the name says, it helps in the growth of all the body parts. Okay, body parts grow, right? From childhood till the age of like 18 or 19, we keep growing. And that growth is because of growth hormone, right? And it helps in the growth of bones and muscles and all the parts of the body. We grow because of the growth hormone, and it performs specific controlled growth of different parts of the body. Okay, regulated controlled growth of the body happens with the help of growth hormone. But some people, you find problems in growth hormone. And if growth hormone in childhood, if you are born with this problem, in childhood, if you have very little amount of growth hormone, and you won't grow, and you remain as a dwarf. Okay, this is called dwarfism. That's called dwarfism. Okay? It's because of less secretion of growth hormone. And you can see this person, he's 2 feet, that's his height, very short. And some people have too much excess production of growth hormone. If growth hormone is excess, what will happen? They overgrow. Like this is Sultan Kosen, he is more than 8 feet, 8 feet. Okay, This is called gigantism. Gigantism or giantism is due to over secretion of growth hormone. These are two actually diseases caused by over secretion or less secretion of growth hormone. Let's study about the next gland. You can locate the thyroid gland in the neck. Okay, that's a position. You don't feel it, but because it's fleshy and it's very close to the bone and close to the the neck. So you don't feel it on the neck. It's called thyroid gland. Okay, and these are two lobes of the thyroid gland. And what does thyroid gland produce? Thyroid gland produce thyroxine, right? It's remember this is Adam's apple, which you feel in the neck. Okay, Adam's apple is a cartilage you feel in the neck, and it's right below that, right? And for the production of thyroxine, thyroid gland need iodine. Okay, iodine is required for the thyroid to form thyroxine. Where do we get iodine from? Iodine we obtain from seafood. Okay, seafood is the main source of like fish from the sea, any form of algae from the sea. All these things contain iodine. But in some places where iodine is not available, what happens? They don't have enough iodine, and they get a disease in which the two lobes of thyroid gland swells out, and this is called goiter, right? Okay. To supply iodine in those places, everywhere, what the governments are doing, countries are doing, they mix iodine in the salt. So iodine is added to the salt. So we call this salt iodized salt. What's the benefit of adding iodine to the salt? So people who live in this area where they don't have access to enough seafood, they get sufficient, iodine. And people who don't eat seafood, like there are people who don't eat seafood, like fish, and if they don't eat it, they may not get enough iodine. And to supply iodine to everyone, in many countries they mix iodine with the salt, and this is called iodized salt, right? And what's the use of thyroxine? What does thyroxine do in our body? Thyroxine helps in carbohydrate. It helps in carbohydrate. What do you mean by carbohydrate? Like glucose, carbohydrate, fat, and protein metabolism. Protein metabolism. What's the meaning of metabolism? All the chemical reactions in the body are together known as metabolic reactions. So we have reactions which breaks down carbohydrate. We have reactions which break down fat as well as protein. And those reactions are controlled by thyroxine. Okay, it's a hormone which controls all these reactions. And balance of all these reactions helps the body to grow. Okay, growth is the output of a balance of metabolic reactions controlled by thyroxine. Okay, so along with the growth hormone, even thyroxine promote growth by controlling metabolism of carbohydrate, fat, and protein. Okay, look at this. That's a hypothalamus. Okay, hypothalamus produce a releasing hormone. That's a releasing hormone. The releasing hormone from the hypothalamus go to the pituitary gland, and the pituitary gland produce a specific pituitary hormone. Okay, that's a TSH is a pituitary hormone, but we don't have it in our syllabus, so no need to memorize it. The pituitary hormone go to thyroid gland and help the thyroid gland to produce thyroxine. Okay, that's how we produce thyroxine. Thyroxine is production of thyroxine is controlled by releasing hormones from the hypothalamus. Look at the person with goiter. Okay, this disease is known as goiter. Why do people get goiter? Because they don't take less intake of iodine. When you have less intake of iodine, what happens to your thyroid gland? This is a normal thyroid gland. And when you don't have iodine, the glands enlarge, gets bigger. And when it gets bigger, you can feel it on the neck. On the neck, you can feel it as a swelling. It swells out. And this disease is called gout. Let's study about the next gland. This is called pancreas. This gland is called pancreas. You can see it. It's located on the small intestine. That's a small intestine. This is the liver. That's a gallbladder, and this is a common bile duct. And it's attached here. See, it's connected through a common bile duct. Okay, right. We are studying about pancreas. Remember, pancreas has two different functions. This is a gland with exocrine function and endocrine function. Okay, in the digestive system, you studied that the pancreas produces pancreatic juice, and pancreatic juice has enzymes, and those enzymes are used for digestion. Okay, but we are not studying the exocrine function, which is the production of enzyme. We are studying endocrine function here. What's endocrine function here? And inside the pancreas, you find two kinds of cells. Right, one group of cell is called alpha cells, and second group of cells are known as beta cells. Okay, right, they are together. Alpha and beta cells are in groups. Okay, in the form of groups of alpha and beta cells, right? So endocrine part is made up of alpha cells and beta cells, right? What does beta cells do? Beta cells produce a hormone, insulin. So that's why you call it pancreas endocrine gland, because it's insulin is a hormone, and alpha cells produce another hormone, which is called glucagon. But glucagon is not mentioned in the this part of the reader. So insulin, we'll be talking about insulin. What does insulin do? As it produces insulin, insulin decreases the blood sugar, right? Our blood sugar is decreased by insulin. For example, if you have taken carbohydrate containing meal, okay, you have eaten a lot of sweet things, for example. If you have eaten sweets, or if you have eaten something that has a lot of starch, your blood glucose increases. Okay, blood glucose increases. When the blood glucose increases, high blood glucose means this stimulates the beta cells to produce insulin. What does insulin do? Insulin decreases blood sugar. How does it decrease the blood sugar, right? It converts the glucose, which is a sugar, into fat. That's one way. It helps cells to use the sugar to produce energy. In this way, it brings the sugar down. So that's the main function of the insulin. So insulin is produced by pancreas. Which part of pancreas? Beta cells. And beta cells, when it release the insulin, only when blood glucose increases. Increase in blood glucose help help to release insulin. When insulin increases, it will bring the blood sugar down to normal. And how? By changing the glucose or the blood sugar into fat, or by helping the cell to use the sugar to produce energy. All right? Okay. And this is the function of insulin. Glucagon has a different function, but as it's not in the reader, there's no need to memorize. It actually increases the blood sugar. Increases blood sugar. Suppose you are fasting, you're not eating food. You can see the blood sugar is brought back to normal by glucagon. Okay, so focus mainly on the insulin. Right, insulin helps to regulate the blood sugar. Actually, it reduces excess blood sugar in our body. What if there's no insulin? You might have heard this disease. It's called diabetes. People who don't have insulin, who if they don't produce insulin, they have a disease called diabetes, right? And people uh, with diabetes, they have to take injection of artificially made insulin, because they don't produce the insulin. So this is another endocrine gland, which is known as the pancreas. Remember, pancreas has two functions, endocrine as well as exocrine. Exocrine function you studied in digestive system. We don't mention that here. But here there are different cells These cells, alpha and beta cells, they don't produce enzymes. They only produce hormones. So we call it endocrine. Okay, let's understand the feedback mechanism. Blood sugar is regulated by feedback mechanism. Hormones are regulated by feedback mechanism. For example, here, as I told you, when you keep eating, sweet things, okay? Imagine you're eating chocolates and sweets. When you keep eating sweets, what happens to your blood sugar? Your blood glucose, blood sugar. Glucose means blood sugar, right? This blood sugar increases, it becomes very high, and this stimulates the pancreas. This activates the pancreas. As I told you, it activates the beta cells of pancreas. And what the beta cells do? They produce insulin. What does insulin do? It decreases. It decreases the blood sugar. Okay, it brings the blood sugar back to normal, right? Blood sugar is back to normal. When it is back to normal, what happens to the secretion of insulin? The insulin, when it becomes normal, it will stop. Normal sugar stop the production of insulin. And this is called feedback mechanism, right? All hormones are secretion of hormone. Remember, it's in general. Secretion of hormone is controlled by feedback mechanism, right? Hormone should not be too high or too little in our body, right? And that's how we regulate the concentration of hormones in our body. That's another organ, endocrine gland. There are two of them here. One is called testis and second is called ovary. Where do you find testis? Testis you find in male. That's a male sex organ. And the female sex organ is known as, that's a female sex organ. The female sex organ is known as the ovary, right? And here you can see the ovaries produce, testis produce testosterone. It forms testosterone. And ovary produce the estrogen. Okay, sorry. Ovaries produce estrogen, which is the female sex hormone. But it also produces one more hormone. The second hormone it forms is progesterone. Right? Progesterone is more related to pregnancy. But what does estrogen do? Estrogen and testosterone produce secondary sexual characteristics. Okay, we'll be studying it in another chapter. These are called secondary sexual characteristics. Okay. What are secondary sexual characteristics? For example, in a boy after the age of like maybe 12 or 13, when he's in high school, you can see new features appears. For example, his voice become deeper, okay? Deepening of voice. Okay, that's one feature. Appearance of facial hair. Okay, facial hair appears, body hair appears, these new characteristics are known as secondary sexual characteristics. Similarly, even in females you find new characteristics appear, and these new characteristics are known as secondary sexual characteristics, and this is produced by testosterone. And the formation of testosterone starts, it's not it doesn't begin at the during childhood. It starts during puberty. Puberty means during teenage. Okay, it begins in teenage, and we'll study more about it in the other lesson, which is the sexual reproduction. Okay, even here you can see a negative and a feedback happening. Like you have when you have too much of these two hormones, what does it do? It will stop the secretion of other hormones, like these are pituitary hormones, right? Okay, as I told you before, that's a releasing hormone. Releasing hormone comes from hypothalamus. It goes to pituitary gland. Pituitary gland produces the pituitary hormones. Those two are pituitary hormones. Those pituitary hormones help the testis and the ovary to produce testosterone and estrogen and progesterone. And when its concentration is too high, its concentration, production is stopped by the feedback. This is the feedback. Okay, but this feedback is not in this part of the chapter, so we don't study it here, right? Okay, that's the next one. This is called adrenal gland. You can see adrenal gland, adrenal gland. And where do you find the adrenal gland? It's on the kidney. It's located on the kidney, and you can see it. There is blood going in. See, there's blood vessel going into the. So it's connected to the blood vessels, right? And again, it is controlled by hypothalamus, right? Hypothalamus will produce the releasing hormone. Releasing hormone go to the adrenal gland, and adrenal gland produces adrenaline. Okay, that's how we produce adrenaline, right? And adrenaline is known as a stress hormone. They call this a stress hormone, right? Or they call it an emergency hormone, or they call it like a fight hormone, a flight hormone, okay, or a fright hormone. These are different names, okay. What does it mean? Like if you're fighting with someone, you get this hormone. You're running away from a danger. For example, a dog is, chasing, running after you. You run really fast. You're frightened. You're scared. Before the exam, you get scared. All those feelings you have before the exam, it's all because of adrenaline. Okay. And sometimes you're stressed out. You're in tension. What is tension? Because of adrenaline, right? So it is produced by adrenal gland. What's the effect of adrenaline? Okay, all mammals produce adrenaline. In the reader, you can see the example of a squirrel. It's trying to escape from its predator, right? So when what happens when we have adrenaline? When we are stressed out, right? Look at the effect of adrenaline. Remember, when you have adrenaline, you could be in danger, or you could have a feeling of danger. Even if you're watching a thriller movie, you get adrenaline secretion. You might have experienced after watching a movie, you get tired, especially a thriller movie. When you play, games like, the games on the PC or any kind of games, you can see the action. Wherever there's an action, there is stress, there is fear, you have adrenaline. Okay. So what does it do? When you have too much adrenaline, before the exam, your heart beat faster. Okay. Why the heart beat faster? So that heart is trying to supply more oxygen to the muscles. Okay. More glucose to the muscles so that muscles can produce more energy, maybe to escape from a danger, to run away from a danger, or face a danger. Okay, so that's the heart is beating fast. When the heart beat faster, what happens to blood flow? Blood flows quickly to the muscles, so muscles get more energy. Okay, and it does one more thing. It will cause uh, less blood flow to the digestive system. To the digestive system, the blood flow decreases. To the skin, the blood flow decreases, right? And how? The adrenaline make the blood vessel that takes blood to digestive system and the skin narrow. Okay, it causes contraction of muscles. Okay, contraction of muscles of in the blood vessels. Okay, in the blood vessels that transport blood to these places, right? That means if that's a blood vessel, normal one. Let's say that's a normal blood vessel without adrenaline. Once adrenaline is secreted, they become narrow. See, it was wide this way. Now it becomes narrow, right? When it becomes narrow, the blood flow to the digestive system and skin decreases. That's why when you're scared, you feel, your skin is cold, your fingertips are colder, and you get butterflies in the stomach. Something is moving in the stomach. This effect is because of less blood flow to your digestive system and the skin. Why it is happening? So that more blood can be transported to the muscles. Okay, so it can the body can transport more blood to the muscles. When you have too much blood flowing to the muscle can produce more energy, it gets more oxygen and more glucose. That's the idea of supplying more blood to the muscles. You might have observed that your breathing rate also increases. We, we breathe faster. Your breathing rate increases. Your rate of breathing increases. What's the reason? As you breathe faster, okay, as you breathe faster, what happens? You take in more oxygen. You take in more oxygen, and this oxygen is again used by the muscles for doing respiration. Okay, that's the benefit of breathing faster, right? And one more thing which is happening is, your pupils dilate. Eyes. In the eyes, you find the pupils. Pupil become bigger so that you can see better. So these are the effects on the body. And about the pupil, it's not mentioned in the reader, right? But memorize the rest of the things. Heartbeat increases to supply more oxygen and glucose to the muscles, so you can produce more energy. And when muscles have more energy, maybe you can run fast, you can fight the enemy and escape from a danger, and so on. And if you're not doing anything, the muscles simply keep producing energy. Okay, and uh, what else happens? Adrenaline will make the blood vessels, these are blood vessels, okay, the blood vessels that carry blood to the skin and digestive system narrow. When they become narrow, less blood flow to the digestive system, because you don't need so much blood now. It's a dangerous situation. You don't need so much blood to the skin. What's the benefit of this? So that more blood can be transported to the muscles, and you breathe faster to take in more oxygen, and this oxygen is supplied to the muscles to produce more energy, right? And even pupil dilates, become bigger, so that you can see better the danger you're facing. Okay, right. That's a summary of all the hormones. These are the hormones. Growth hormone secreted by the pituitary gland regulates growth and development of the body. Thyroxine secreted by thyroid gland controls carbohydrate, protein, fat metabolism. Adrenal gland secretes adrenaline. It prepares the body to deal with emergency situations like fighting and all those things. And pancreas produce insulin. We have only insulin in the reader, so stick to that. It regulates the blood sugar level. Testosterone, development of sexual organs and secondary sexual characteristics in male, and estrogen help do the same thing in females. Thank you very much. Hope you understood. Read the reader and underline the important points and do the questions at the end of the reader. Thank you.